Well, obviously, one more round to go, but looks like the minor premierships basically sort of mathematical equations could mean otherwise. But what does that kind of shape up for this weekend? Does it change your thinking at all?
Not really. I mean, there's, we're about trying to play really good footy, and regardless of what's on the end of that, we need to play good footy, and so this week we'll be, attempting to do that, play a good footy against a team that puts enormous pressure on, and they've got some high talent, so we'll be doing that, and clearly it's a strong position to be in, but we need to get through this week and then sort of sit down and reassess where to from there. But it's exciting this time of the year. The weather's good. Hopefully a massive crowd here at the SCG on the weekend, and the boys have got a pep in their step. There's
a lot of talk and suggestion from people outside the club going, the Swans should be resting guys this weekend in preparation for finals. What do you make of those conversations?
Well, it sort of all depends on what players, and obviously being inside the footy club, you're much more aware on what everyone needs and requires. I mean, my experience over many years has told me that you can go either way, and you can go too far one way, too far the other, and not get the balance right. And you've got to be clearly mindful of that. You've got to be mindful that you can go too far down a conservative route, and then that sort of impacts the way you play or the style or whatever you want to do on that. So you've got to be mindful and understanding of that. So you've got to keep things in perspective, balance it out. Obviously, if any players are at risk or sore, they don't play. But if they're fit and ready to go, and there's no reason for them not to play, well, you can't live in the space of we shouldn't play half your team because you might get injured. That's a pretty dangerous space to be in. So you want to make sure you keep your footy going well. There's still a lot to play for this week. We still want to play very well this week against a good team, and for a whole heap of reasons.
What does that mean for Chad?
Well, Chad was actually he was declaring himself fit last week, so he actually felt a little bit tight before the Collingwood game. Didn't say anything. He actually played really well, really well, and only mentioned it after the Collingwood game that he was a bit tight. And we said, well, you played well. There was nothing nothing wrong with you in that game. And so we were really conservative last week, giving him last week off, and so we gave him last week off. He was keen to play. We said no. Fortunately, we got through the game, won the game. He trained today, trained really well. So, if you considered we were conservative last week, he's still got to get through training on Thursday, but he trained today, trained fine. Once again, it's sort of looking at what's in front of you. You've got to be mindful of the planning in that as well, and it's looking positive for him at the moment.
John, what about Brodie? He's obviously had a big workload, and also Will. He's played really well. Are you looking to potentially rest those two blokes?
Well, only if they need it. Will's had a bit of a sore knee for a number of weeks, and he actually feels a bit better today, but he's had a sore knee for a number of weeks. He was actually pretty sore in the first 5 minutes last week. He was limping around. I was concerned about him last week, but he feels a bit better today. And Brodie's had a big workload. We've been able to manage him during the week. He's been able to have some time off and down tools and regenerate there as well. So once again, you have to be mindful that it's about this week, but there's also a bye the following week, and you can get into a bit of a rhythm of you can go from too much to not enough, and you've just got to get the balance right. And we've got some experienced coaches and experienced medical conditioning staff that we generally try and sit down and make the right decisions.
You had those couple of days off a couple of weeks ago after those two big losses. How much has that contributed to kind of the boys being able to come back and kind of pull their games together a bit more? Or has there been a bunch of other things going on as well?
There's always everything. It's never, everyone wants to think that there's one thing that does something or changes things. I've always been consistent in that. There never is one thing. You go through the program, you think what you need at that particular time. We were on the road, we had 6-day breaks. Those things were always indicating that we were going to give the players a few days away, and that's what we did. We changed our training programs up. Those things, different stimulus at different times, is really useful for the players, and particularly at the back end of this season. And so we're able to do that, and we've been pleased the last couple of weeks. Obviously, our second half of the weekend was really strong footy, and we'll continue to manage that as we see fit, knowing full well, it's an exciting time of the year. how great is it to still, this week's a big game for us, but it's not our last game. So that's a really exciting thing for the footy team and players. Is they were buzzing out there training today. It was awesome.
Against Essendon, one guy who was really strong in his return was Lewis Melican. I mean,
Yeah.
It's been a really good story to see him build that consistency up this year. I mean, when you look back to end of last year, he plays that Carlton elimination final really strong. But in terms of what you would have liked to have seen from this year, has he exceeded kind of your expectations?
Not as far as a player, because we always had great faith in him as a player. If you generally, over the years, when he's been fit and feeling good, we've generally played him because we know that he can be a really important player for us, and he's been doing that this year, and he's been fortunate that he's been able to play more footy, and that's added to his form. And so, he's been important. He's got great leadership ability as far as down in our back six. He sees the game well. He's strong in the contest. Takes his marks when he needs to, and it's been very good. So we're pleased with how he's going.
And just having those combinations, it feels like there's just a lot more stability when it's him, it's Tommy Mack, and then it's Dane down there as well.
Yeah, that's right, and that's all part of it, isn't it? Like you sort of, we've missed some of those guys for different times over the weeks, and so when you get them back together and you play that. Together, that's always helps. I mean, on the weekend we had Callum down there. We put Ollie to the wing. We've made some subtle changes to our team over the weeks. Made some differences and changed a few pieces around, and hopefully that's been a benefit as well.
John, in terms of the last two games, two great wins, do you feel you have cracked the conundrum of the first quarter in terms of what is going on? Because you come on so strong, as you said, great second half. I know you don't like to put it down to one thing, but what are the selection of things?
We still haven't cracked it because we still haven't got it right. So we're still working on it. We're aware of it, would you believe? And but we still haven't got it right. And so we got to get better in our first quarters. There's no question about that. That certainly helps. If we got enormous pressure around the ball, I mean, Adelaide bring enormous pressure around the ball. I sat there and watched their game on Saturday night. That game was full on. That was a high intense finals type game, and so we better be ready this week when we jump out of the blocks, because the other team will be, and we need to match that.
Taylor Adams had a quieter 2 weeks and was obviously subbed out of last week's game. With a few guys coming back in the next couple of weeks, what would you like to see from Taylor to kind of really push and show that he's got that spot there?
I just think just continue to show experience, show his leadership, just play the system and put enormous pressure on around the ball. It's pretty simple. We gave young Corey a go on the weekend. The game was done when we did the sub, and we thought we'd play Corey. So for the last 10 minutes, give him a bit of experience in front of the crowd, and what we do know is Taylor's got a great experience, and certainly whether it's training or preparation, that certainly helps.
And just in terms of this next stretch coming up, the fact that final round here in Sydney, but you've locked up a top 2 spot, and then hopefully that could mean a nicer path to a grand final in Melbourne. Do you look forward to what that means for the club and how you can plan around it, or how important is it to kind of not get ahead of yourself?
It's always a balance. It's generally important not to get ahead of yourself. Mm-hmm. That's always, over many, many years, held us in good stead, and we keep our one foot in front of the other mentality, and just get our preparation right, get our training right, get our meetings right, those type of things, because certainly as a playing group, you don't need to focus too much more on that. You just need to focus on the present, and essentially get that right. Then once we get through Saturday night and have hopefully watch a strong contest against Adelaide, we'll then sit down and see what the coming weeks look like. But for now, we're completely focused on Adelaide this week. We need to be. They're a good team. It's an important hit out for us.
John, I always wonder, as a footy fan, a Sydney footy fan, it's nice having both the teams quite close to the top, you on top. How closely do you keep an eye on what they're doing out west?
I have great pride in what the code's been able to do here. And I'm talking about both teams. It's actually really, I've been here for a long time, 22 years. And when I first came up here, there was plenty of posts around in the ground at different ovals, but not many AFL posts. There certainly wasn't any around the place, and you talk to schools and there wasn't much being played at school level or anything like that. And my kids have played rugby league, rugby union, soccer, they've played and AFL, and I think it's just great that we've been able to add another sport to people's choices in this city, and we feel so lucky and privileged that the fans have embraced us, the kids have embraced us, the supporters, the noise that we got out of the last game that we're here was enormous. Like the crowd was going off this, you can almost feel the grandstand shaking, and that sort of feeling is infectious. The players absolutely love it, and you know, I've been much more in tune to that environment now this year because our supporters are just going ballistic, which is just terrific to hear. You know, it's so exciting as a coach and players to be able to hear the crowd so invested, and I think I'm just really pleased for both clubs and the code that we've been able to you know, have an imprint and having a footprint up in this most competitive market, sporting market in the world. There's more professional sporting clubs here in codes than anywhere else in the world, so it's not an easy thing to do, so I think it's a credit to both clubs.
How are Paps and Juzzy tracking at the moment?
Good. Paps and Juzzy have both been training. Juzzy did a fair bit more than what I expected today and moved really well, so that's a really good sign. Both he and Paps won't play this week, but we hopefully expect them to train next week. They've certainly done, you know, Paps did a big session yesterday. He'll continue to do some more work this week. Hopefully they're tracking well for the, you know, the first week.
Some trade speculation is always growing at this time of the year. Luke Park and Dane Rampy were named by Elsa Clarkson. What do you make of that?
I generally don't talk about our players that are in or out of contract, let alone anyone else's. So I just leave it. I never talk about the speculation because it's pretty pointless.
No quick message to Clarko going hands off? Or?
No. Maybe take it as a compliment.
Because actually on that player, Luke Parker's been unbelievable. He's huge at the contest. Premiership winner as well. Can you just take us through just the impact he's had? We obviously know he's a leader, but just at the contest, that heart at the footy, how impressive have you been with him since he's come back? He's been very good. He's been forward and on ball, and he's been using his experience. He's been invaluable with his leadership, helping Millsy. You know, through the year we always thought he'd have a contribution at some stage, and at the back end of the year he'd be important, and he's been important. You know, the last couple of weeks he's been super and really valuable in his leadership and helping steer the younger guys around and just, you know, doing what he needs to do in the important moments. He's been very good.